The Chinese government really accomplished something special out of nothing and shocked their American colleagues and maybe even the rest of the world. Chinese scientists have established a village in Xinjiang, located in the middle of the Taklamakan desert. But what is the reason they build a city in the middle of the desert? How on earth did they manage to build a city in a non-habitable desert at all? Hey everyone, and welcome back to yet another video from our channel. I hope you guys are doing extremely well. In this video, we will be talking about the Chinese city in the middle of the Taklamakan desert. We will be covering every aspect of this amazing project, so if you are new to this channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Now without any further ado, let's hop right into the video. Taklamakan Desert, Chinese, Taklimakan Shamo, is one of the world's largest sandy deserts. Taklamakan is in the Tarim Basin in Xinjiang, western China. The desert area is 600 miles from west to east, 260 miles wide, and 123,550 square miles. In the west and south, the desert reaches 3,900 to 4,900 feet above sea level, while in the east and north, 2,600 to 3,300 feet. The Tian Shan, Kunlun Mountains, and Pamir's flank the Taklamakan. In the east is the Langdon Basin. In the south and west is a strip of sloping pebble detritus, desert lowland. People economy. Taklamakan has no permanent inhabitants. Hunters arrive occasionally, but stock breeders avoid the area due to the lack of greenery. Since 1950, China has encouraged sedentary farmers to go to Taklamakan's marginal regions. After a few years, yields from low-capacity areas drop and farmers must shift on. Due to insufficient soil fertility, fallow pastures tend to become deserts instead of grassland. Recent market-oriented rural reforms have fostered fast herd expansion, which has led to overgrazing and accelerated desertification. In the 1950s, oil was found at Korla on the Taklamakan. Along the southern rim and in the center, large amounts were found in the 1980s. Despite harsh desert circumstances, these places have been exploited. Transportation across the shifting sands is risky, but roads encircle the desert's edge and new ones have been developed from Korla to Yutian near Kunlun. Tensions between Han and Hui officials in Taklamakan date back centuries. Chinese migration into the region, combined with Islamic fundamentalist agitation elsewhere in Asia and minority unrest in Central Asia, has stoked local hatred towards the Chinese. Fun fact, did you know that the Taklamakan Desert is also known as the Sea of Death and that it's the largest desert in China? Pretty scary, right? Not the kind of desert you choose to live in if you ask me. Research. The famous Silk Road caravan route connected China, Central Asia, and Europe. This trans-Asian road brought Buddhism to East Asia in the 1st century CE and most of China's international trade and other ties. In the 15th and 16th centuries, marine connections superseded overland routes to East Asia. Desert and oasis villages were a mystery to Europeans for centuries. The Taklamakan was surrounded by steep mountain ranges on 3 sides and the Gobi on the 4th. In the late 19th century, scientists began successfully exploring the desert. Swedish explorer Sven Anders Hedin was the first European to examine the region. He returned from his first journey, 1893 to 98, with artifacts of a forgotten Buddhist culture that lived there in the 1st century CE. Hedin's discoveries and maps inspired and helped others, including Albert von Le Coq, Langdon Warner, and Sir Aurel Stein. Stein's first trip in 1900 unearthed sand-buried cities and Buddhist art. This mission started an international race to steal Taklamakan's ancient wealth, which ended when the Chinese banned further investigation in the 1920s. China and the Soviet Union, until 1992, conducted most of the subsequent research in the region, but Europeans and Americans also visited. Drainage. As an internal drainage basin, the Tarim Depression gathers all mountain runoff, feeding rivers and groundwater. The groundwater table under the sand probably runs from west to east. Due to its tiny quantity and rapid evaporation rate, precipitation's role in moistening sands and feeding groundwaters is minimal. The Kunlun Mountains rivers drain 100 to 200 kilometers into the desert before drying up. Only the Hotan River crosses the desert and sometimes flows into the Tarim. Would you live in the desert? Do you have any survival tips for us? Life forms. The Taklamakan is nearly devoid of vegetation. Thin thickets of tamarisk, niter shrubs, and reeds grow in sand dunes depressions when groundwater is 10 to 15 feet deep. Moving sands prevent this vegetation from spreading. Along the desert's margins, where sand dunes meet river basins and deltas and groundwater is near the surface, the flora is richer. There are also Turanga poplar, oleaster, camelthorn, Zygophyllaceae family members, and saltworts. Around scrub, sand dunes form hummocks. Taklamakan has few animals. Only in desert peripheries where water and vegetation appear is the fauna more diversified. Open regions have gazelles, and river valley thickets have wild boars. Carnivores include wolves and foxes. Tigers were extinct by the early 20th century. Siberian deer, which inhabit the Tarim River Basin, and the wild camel, which once roamed the Taklamakan as far as the Hotan River, are rare creatures. In the sand dunes, there are many rabbits, gerbils, field mice, and jerboas. Long-eared hedgehogs and bats are common insectivores. Common birds include tufted larks and Tarim jays. Geography and demography. In the western half of the desert, Cenozoic-era sandstones and clays create minor mountain ranges and chains. The arc-shaped Mazartag Mountains are between the Hotan and Yarkand river valleys. 90 miles long and 2 to 3 miles wide, they rise just 1,000 to 1,150 feet above the sandy plain. Rostag Mountain, also known as Toktakaz Mountain, reaches 5,117 feet and rises 6 to 800 feet above the plain. Both ranges have scant, desert-type vegetation covered by eluvium and rock debris. In the north, Taklamakan sands define the Tarim River Valley. The plain slopes south to north, and the Kunlun Mountains rivers flow that way. The Hotan and Keria river basins have survived, but other shallower rivers have been lost in the sands, filling their empty valleys with wind-borne sand. The Taklamakan is covered by 100-foot thick alluvial sediments. This alluvial layer features a 1,000-foot thick wind-borne sand cover. Wind-formed topography and sand dunes make up the terrain. Taklamakan's climate is warm and continental, with an annual high of 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Precipitation ranges from 1.5 inches in the west to 0.4 inches in the east. On the desert's eastern edge, summer temperatures can reach 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Eastern July averages 77 degrees Fahrenheit. In January, the average air temperature is 14 to 16 degrees Fahrenheit, and the lowest temperature falls to 4 degrees Fahrenheit. Western summers have north and northwest winds. These two air currents intersect at the desert center at the northern end of the Keria River, creating a complex circulation system reflected in the sand dunes. When the surface sand warms up in the spring, rising currents and northeasterly winds arise. During this time, hurricane-force dust storms can reach 13,000 feet. Other winds generate dust clouds, covering Taklamakan for almost a year. And that's it for today, guys. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please click on the like button and share it with your friends and family. If you have any questions or comments, please share them with us in the comment space below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to see even more of our incredible videos. We'll catch up in the next video.